I don't know about you, but an amazing master class like this on the complexity of the energy system makes my mind whir and sometimes forget I actually have a body. So can I ask people to stand up for a moment? It's for a good cause. Let's remember we're alive. We're changing the world. And while we're standing up, can we give it up for the Roosevelt Institute and Rihanna? I have been dreaming of being able to, and everyone can sit down when they want, or stand up if you want to. But I have been dreaming of being able to talk about what I think is a misnomer in permitting reform, but to talk about this whole constellation of issues in the right room that has the right collective expertise to think through our future. And we got to take this conversation and ripple it outward. And so I'm not going to say anything original. I have no burden of originality on my shoulders because all of the important points have been made very compellingly by everyone in this room. And so what I'm going to try to do is lift up what feels very true and important to take with us on our way, because we're at the beginning of a really hot fight about what will be called permitting reform, but is anything but. And so to that, I'd like to just state a few assumptions that I'm making about the moment that we're in and how it's influencing this important policy discussion. You know, one is there's a sense, even in climate circles, that the crux of this is that environmentalists need to stop stopping stuff. That needs to not be our identity and focus anymore. And that what we need to do is unleash the government to roll with more power and less accountability. That's really where the convergence of the GOP effort and some of the center-left effort is. And that convergence is playing out at a moment where, as the IRA makes clear, we don't have a consensus that we're moving toward genuinely clean energy. We are still fully, maybe even more fully, in an all-of-the-above stance with federal taxpayers poised to invest in fossil fuels as well as clean energy. So that's the landscape. Moving back beyond energy, Dana brought this up, democracy. We spent 4 years of Trump hurtling dangerously close to fascism, and so it's no surprise that we don't have a lot of trust in government. And we don't have a lot of faith in institutions that take people out of the equation to push back when government's doing the wrong thing, right? And we're living in a time of just almost impossible to believe polarization around values and our social understanding of our country. And so in this room, I think anyone here is taking it as a given that we need to reckon with our past, and that the present, not the legacy, the present system that's founded in racism, that's founded in oppressions of all kind, is not just something we've got to deal with on the sidelines of climate, but that it is actually one of the channels through which destruction of the planet flows, right? But outside this room, that is not a given. And you know what an understatement that is. And so the idea of centering justice into implementation, I love that Senator Markey invoked Dr. Wright, implementation is the whole thing. The idea that we're going to center justice in that without a huge fight is obviously wrong. And the idea that we have sort of a social agreement about even the transmission lines that got to get built, much less anything else, is wrong. And so when we talk about going into our bedrock framework for environmental law, for energy law, and so much more, we have to understand that that consequential conversation is playing out in a really perilous time as well as a time of great possibility. So I kept finding myself looking at Reimagine the Rules And I thought, all right, what are we really reimagining the rules? What rules are we talking about and to do what? And I think what we're trying to reimagine the rules for is to drive genuinely clean energy, to create a shared vision of what a clean and fair energy system looks like, and to build the trust to align around that, at least among the people who believe in climate change. And I've been told that's more than 70% these days. So what's it going to take to move into this kind of a conversation, a policy conversation that's fact-based? Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jung-Yu, if you're still here, for giving us actual facts to understand the problem. How are we going to clearly define that problem so that we're not talking in these overarching terms of permitting reform, terms that lend themselves to the stalking horse that we're going to see over and over again, one bill after another, in this Republican-controlled House? If we scope the problem for what it is, let's say we've been underbuilding, underinvesting in transmission, and we got to get it built not only expeditiously, but fairly. That's a big thing to do. It's been years since we've done that. No one remembers even how it happened the first time. But that's a much different problem than change all the rules and make government work better. So if we're talking about the problem at the right scope, why are we even talking about NEPA? Everyone was here in this room for this panel. I don't know anyone who understands the energy regulatory system who it would come to mind first to gut NEPA. It's like not that big a player. On Western public lands, all right, let's talk about NEPA for a second. So here are the arguments that I'm hearing. It's slowing us down. Well, the same people who say, can you live with a presumption of 2 years getting an EIS done? I'm like, you don't need me to live with it. You already have it in Fast 41. It applies to interstate transmission lines. So all of the kind of moderate reforms that some people are saying they want without disrupting the actual role that NEPA plays are already there. So there's that. Then it's like, the wrong people weaponize NEPA. It's these NIMBYs. I'm like, well, what about the Koch-funded retirees who are challenging every wind and solar project they can get? But as Jamie made the point earlier, what, are you going to take away all the laws? NEPA's not the only law there is that people sue over these projects. And let me just say as a lawyer, this is maybe one point that hasn't been made. The idea that you can sue over something and stop it in its tracks, that's very hard to do. There has to be something wrong with that project. You win that there's something wrong with the permitting process. Or you win outside of the litigation context because you're very powerful and your political influence is winning. And that's not a problem that gutting NEPA solves. Then I hear this weird argument, and I don't think I'm going to give it its due because I don't really understand it. But it's like, we've got to level the playing field. This system works better for the well-heeled fossil fuels interests, and so we need to make it fair for the clean energy interests. I'm like, well, how is that going to go? You're going to make it even easier for the people who are already funded and have it dialed, and just hope that, like, eradicating rules and laws that don't penalize the dirty or help the clean are just going to make it all work in a free-for-all? I think that suffers from a not understanding structurally power and politics in our country. And what I think people don't really say is, public engagement is a pain in the ass. It's overrated. If we had less of it, we could do more. And sometimes in the same sentence, they'll say, look at how quickly things are getting built out in China. I mean, I think this is a real thread of feeling and thought. And yet all of the data that we have, the evidence shows that projects falter when you don't invest in engagement up front. It's everything. Maria said it so beautifully in her panel. And so why are we having a discussion about a race to the bottom, like eliminate all the rules? And by the way, eliminate all the rules that apply to everything. Some clean energy people are saying, to get our thing done, let's eliminate the rules that apply to all aspects of American life that impinge on the environment or your health. Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, gut them because we got to get transmission built. Not correct, and it's very arrogant about what the implications of that would be. Coming back to my point is, why is it a race to the bottom? Like, get rid of NEPA, get rid of this, get rid of that. Nikki's 100% right. NEPA's flawed. It isn't the best instrument it could be to make sure that that public engagement and outreach happens in a real way, that consultation isn't a fake promise. It's not the law it needs to be now to create a master plan, a national vision of what's needed, and then have the kind of process that gives us the buy-in to move at the speed of greater trust. Well, we're going to need something. We're going to need something just to be the umbrella. I think of it as a container. Yours is more beautiful. The umbrella. Why aren't we making the umbrella bigger? Why aren't we making the umbrella stronger? And so I'm often asked, why do you bring Environmental Justice for All Act into this conversation? I'm like, what are you not understanding? We need that level of law to change people's bad habits and bring us together into different relationship, a different enterprise between regulators, between project developers, and between people who are impacted. And so, you know, I think this is a kind of room that can start to advance the understanding of why Environmental Justice for All Act is at very the heart of the solution, not the problem. And I'll also say, like, while people are saying, you know, this has never worked, it's never worked. The one thing, and Raul made this point, the one thing that's never worked is weakening NEPA. It's never sped anything up. But what we've never tried before is what we have our first chance to do. Never in its history has NEPA been effectively funded. $750 million. I was looking at the numbers last night because I was kind of like, I must be misremembering this. It's wild. We can't even imagine what it would be like to have this many experts and people able to pull off real analysis in a timely way. Incredible. Combine that with the Fast 41 dashboard, not the terrible things about Fast 41 that we can talk about in the hallway. But that's a different level of capacity and coordination across government. So let's give NEPA a chance. And Eric, you made this point. We have old laws that we've never dared to implement in the way that they were conceived. No one's ever tried to do an honest master plan with community engagement up front. What they do is a shitty one, and then they try to tier to it. And so we give programmatic planning a bad name. We're like, we don't like that. We know how that looks. Well, the past can't be a guide to the future, or else we're done. So what if we were part of pushing on this newly resourced government to do it the right way and create the right kind of plan that we actually could tier to? Sudine was talking about the time it takes for each generator to come and say, I'd like to do this project, and then you think, well, how would that project fit into the grid? Wouldn't it be radical for both siting and transmission planning if regionally and then rolling up to nationally, we had a vision of where it would be placed to advance clean energy rather than the interests of utilities, which are still relying on their fossil assets as long as they can? That would be radical. It would also be sensible and faster. So let me say, all of that is possible, but even if we had a perfect NEPA, plus EJ for All Act, perfect EJ for All Act, perfect implementation by the government, like enlightened project developers, everyone doing their thing, that would not solve the problem of getting more transmission built. And I think many panels, including this last one, really made it clear why. We've got the local, state, federal maze. At the end of the maze, there isn't a clear vision of what you're trying to do. There's, I've covered a lot of these points, the siting authority, the interconnection, the question of who pays, such a big one. And you know, fundamentally, this idea that you could just put a line of law, for instance, in the Manchin side deal and just bulldoze through all these state and local interests. I think, Jung, you put it as this idea of a federal control tower managing this whole thing. I mean, it sounds so beautiful and elegant and fast, maybe sort of in an authoritarian way, but I don't think that's actually gonna work. States have a lot of political power. Governors have a lot of political power. And so just like there's no way around dealing with the people that you're gonna impact, not about us, without us, I think that applies doubly to very powerful entities like states. And so I'm the first to say I would love to see some legislation that gives more clear power, stronger sticks to bring states to the table faster and more effectively. But the idea that there can be sort of a line in a law that would just change our whole world, it's not like that. We don't have a simple energy regulatory system. We got to sweat the details, and we got to be in all the places where these decisions are being made. And so, yes, as we are being faced with a raft of stalking horse permitting reform proposals to gut all our environmental laws, let's be putting forward the smart ideas, the Charge Act that Senator Markey is championing, the Site Act that Senator Sheldon Whitehouse is championing. Right on. Let's think of more of those. Let's put down a marker, because we will need them in the long term. But right now, we don't have to wait. There is so much that existing law would allow us to do. And thank God I don't have to go through it all, because Senator Markey was really on top of it. The one thing I would add to his fantastic list is that we now have this souped up backstop authority through the IIJA, and let's all make sure that the DOE does its job to designate the right corridors, and that FERC uses this backstop authority to get transmission built in them. On no account should anyone be thinking, and I don't think anyone in this room would, but let's spread the news. Why would we ever negotiate away the framework of environmental regulation in this country? And why would we ever negotiate away the norms of community engagement that are just beginning to penetrate this country? Why would we do that in the name of some small gains in the regulatory space that we don't need to be able to move? For the right deal, yes, but let's not negotiate away these precious things that are at the heart of preserving everything that we care about. And I'll just make one, sort of proof point around we've got the tools. At end of 2022, MISO put forward a new cost allocation scenario. Folks in the room, Earth Justice had the privilege of representing NRDC, but I'm sure there are many more people in this room involved. We were able to shake loose $10.5 billion, and it's the most transmission that's ever been approved in one single action. And I forget who was talking about the MISO backbone and what it's facilitating. This is the kind of change that can happen fast once you get it going. And so let's believe in ourselves, and let's believe in this idea of political pressure. We could have the best laws in the world, but people always matter more than laws and regulations. We got to be on top of these regulators. It's as much habit and insecurity that new things can work that's slowing us down as it is permits or any flaws in the law. And it's up to us, the advocacy community, to be showing up in the energy space and ensuring that regulators are feeling the pressure to use all these new resources to build out clean energy instead of residing in the safe, no longer safe, very dangerous status quo. So I'll just close by saying I am in too many conversations where it's only people who know about energy who are like, yeah, throw away NEPA, whatever, we would like this. Or folks who really understand the role that community engagement, who understand how projects, even if their build is clean, are not, and impose disproportionate burdens, but aren't conversant in the energy space. And these two worlds have to merge. That's what happened in this room today, and that's why we've had the best conversation that I've been a part of. And not only do we have to merge our conversations, but we have to merge our advocacy. In a vacuum, bad stuff is going to happen. Bad stuff is going to happen on the hill, and bad stuff's going to happen on the ground. This has a lot of legs, and it keeps me up at night. And so I view today as a moment where we can change the discourse. To Eric's point, not be on the defense, but be on the offense about how we're going to build overnight a different infrastructure platform for a different society. So thank you all for engaging in this discussion. I learned so much, and I feel so honored to be able to reflect back to you all the wisdom that I'm taking with me.